Before we get into the content of McCloskey's 1983 article, The Rhetoric of Economics, let's just have an overview of the structure of the article. Modern rhetoricians sometimes present academic rhetoric as a kind of conversation. And it sounds very congenial and friendly and so on, but sometimes other metaphors are more appropriate. So you might think of a chess match, for example, where players are making moves in anticipation of their opponent making their own moves. So you're attempting to win a debate, for example, by killing the king, so to speak. But that involves a fair bit of strategizing. It might involve bluffs. It might involve moves which you hope the opposition is not going to notice. It might involve setting up elaborate traps and so on. Or sword fighting might be another kind of metaphor, where you have a variety of techniques at your disposal to try and dazzle and outwit your opponent in order to score points. Sometimes sniping is a more appropriate metaphor, where where one party is attempting to make a kill shot on another party, but from a secret hidden location, so out of the blue, so to speak, and trying to hit the opponent at their weakest point, where they're not expecting it. In the case of this article, The Rhetoric of Economics, I think this is actually quite a good example of strategic argumentation here, where obviously we're not looking at one article versus another, but we're looking at how one article deploys rhetoric itself to make a case for a certain kind of position against another. And I'm going to use the analogy of capturing a castle. So first, we need to survey the territory, and that's what happens in part 1 and part 2 of the article. So part 1, rhetoric is defined and some misleading impressions that the reader might have are removed. So we've identified what rhetoric is, and we've then gone out and we've scouted out the enemy and found out what are the chief characteristics of our enemy that we intend to attack. So in this case it's modernism. So after we've surveyed the territory, then we're ready to storm the castle, and that's what part 3 is all about. Part 3 is a multi-pronged attack on modernism. It's an attempt to breach the walls of the castle. So McCloskey attacks from a variety of different positions simultaneously, hoping to break the defences. Then you need to tear down the flags, that is, kind of symbols of the castle, symbols of the ruler of the castle, the king of the castle. Tear down their flags. So that's what's happening in part 4, which is titled "The Unofficial Rhetoric is Honourable but Unexamined." So here what McCloskey's really doing is taking econometrics, which is regarded as objective empirical science, according to the modernist story, and showing that it's not what it appears to be. So it's tearing down this standard of the modernist tradition, or the modernist castle in economics. And also by taking the example of a controversy, in this case controversy over purchasing power parity, and showing that the debate over purchasing power parity is not the objective, disinterested, mechanical working out of the truth that that modernism might characterize it to be, and shows that there's actually something else going on. Then we move on to delegitimising the former. Now we've captured the castle, we've torn down the standards of the flags, and now we need to delegitimise the former ruler to the inhabitants of the castle. And that's what's happening in part 5, where McCloskey seeks to show that the former ruler, modernism, is not what it appears to be. That what the former ruler claimed it was something of a lie. Well, maybe not. That's maybe a bit too strong, but it was tries to unveil the reality of the former ruler. Say the emperor's got new clothes, in a sense. Not new clothes, no clothes. After doing that, then you need to introduce your new ruler, and that's what happens in part 6. Economics is heavily metaphorical, and here McCloskey makes the case that economics really is a rhetorical discipline that heavily relies, as it says there, it heavily relies on metaphor and analogy, and that it's and this is because it's a fallible discipline that doesn't have secure a priori established foundations to it. So what you need to now do is to erect defences in the event of a counterattack. So that's what happens in part 7, Be Not Afraid. And this is basically where McCloskey thinks up potential counter-arguments that might be made against the new ruler, Rhetoric, and seeks to dismiss them or disarm those. So it's preemptively building defences against future attacks that might be made. So after you've done that work, you then need to legitimise the new ruler. And that's what happens in part 8, the good of rhetoric. So it's talking about, why is this new ruler, this Rhetoric, what's so great about it? And McCloskey offers 5 reasons why this is a wonderful new ruler of the castle, and why we should be happy to have this new ruler.